So, welcome to the next edition of the Rare Business Podcast. With me today, I have Mark Earls. Hi, Mark.
Hello there.
So, Mark is a writer and a consultant to business and government. But rather than me going into it, Mark, how about you tell me a little bit about yourself and the sort of work that you do?
Yeah, so my background is in advertising and marketing,
Okay.
and I spent the first part of my career doing that, but doing strategy, and particularly the people bit of strategy.
Yeah.
And it became more and more clear to me about 15 years ago that part of the business world, just as general management, that I was then part of, was not keeping up
Right.
with what we were learning about human beings, and so I set out to try and help people keep up.
Yeah. Okay. So now you've just recently, this is not your first book, but you just recently written a book called Copy. How to do smarter marketing by using other people's ideas. Now I've got a copy of the book in front of me, and first of all, I'd like to say, nice work on the book, on the design and the layout and everything, because it's a beautiful thing.
Thank you. We worked very hard to get to that point, and my collaborators, both John Wiltshire, who's done the illustrations, and my publishers have been amazing in making it happen.
Excellent.
I don't know about you, but I have lots of stuff to read, and anything that makes it easier for me to read it.
Yes, absolutely.
It's gratefully received.
I tell you what, because I showed it to somebody yesterday, and he went, "Wow, that's a good looking object. It really is nice."
Oh, that's good. That's great. Great to hear.
So, tell me about the book a little bit about the book and kind of the main thesis behind it.
Okay, so the book arises out of a line of thinking I've been pursuing for the last 10 more years, which is that we are not, as Western culture teaches, as individuals who act independently mostly, but we're social creatures who live most of our lives in the company of real or imagined other people.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what my book Herd was about a decade ago, and then I'll Have What She's Having as a collaboration with two professors of anthropology and archaeology, and we looked to create a map based on patterns in data which allow you to simply go, what kind of behaviour is this? Is it people copying each other, or is it people acting independently? Because that's a really big question for marketers, for example. Am I going to tell you about the thing, or am I going to tell you about how popular it is, or what experts think about it?
Right.
Very simple, sort of high-level strategy decision. And then this book came out of working using those ideas for the last few years, and the more I talked to people, the more it became clear that in setting marketing strategy and also in innovation, that we all evaded the great power of copying to make new things. Right. And so I wanted to put that right with this book, because it turns out that copying is probably our greatest human gift, and it lies much at the centre of what it is to be a creative person, and all the great creatives recognise its power.
Right. But you don't, when I first kind of read it, and then you read the title and it goes copy, and you think, wow, maybe this is just being British. I'm not really sure, but do you really mean copy? Because if you say to somebody copy something, many people may actually recoil from that term and think about privacy or theft or plagiarism. Can you tell us a bit more about what you mean by copy?
Yeah, no, I use the word copy provocatively, just as the way a decade ago you used the word herd to describe our social ledger.
Right.
And it's provocative because, we have all kinds of workarounds for our uncomfortable feelings about copying. If you're a French movie buff, you might talk about homage.
Yes.
If you're a musician, you might talk about, this is not my homage, but my sample.
Yes.
Or I was inspired by.
Or hat tattoo.
Hat tattoo, exactly. And you go, well, no, it's not a copy. If you're a social scientist, you might disguise your embarrassment about it by talking about social learning.
Right.
Which is one of the buzzwords in this space at the moment. But the truth is, it's about one person seeing what another person has done and taking it and doing something that's what copying is.
And other people might call it innovation.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think that's the really important piece. At the heart of it is the distinction that anthropologists and archaeologists draw between invention, which is what we imagine as innovation, which is, creating something brand new out of scratch, whether it's because we've been kissed by the news, that's that particular night, because we're taking that quite much to drink, or because we're just geniuses beyond the wit of other men, so we've created it all on our own. But they say that that's invention, And that's what we imagine innovation is. But innovation is something that happens. Human beings have done it from the history of time onwards.
Mm-hmm.
And it's taking something someone else has done and doing something to it. And sometimes it means replication.
Mm-hmm.
So for about 4,000 years in Northern Europe, we had rectangular longhouses.
Right.
No particular reason why they were built that way, but they just copied it really close.
Right.
You know, similarly, one of my colleagues was doing a dig in northern India and found the girls who were doing the digging, because it is the map of the world, the girls who do the heavy lifting, they were wearing bangles with the same design as the stuff coming out of the ground from 2,000 years ago.
Right.
Now that's copying as well.
Yes.
Copying strictly, tightly. What the stuff that innovation brings, though, is when it changes. And it changes because you create error in copying.
Right.
And the error is the really good bit, not the mistake.
Ah, okay.
And the error is the clue to creativity and to useful innovation. And so in the book, I basically describe a number of ways, not just to feel good about copying, when it's a great, amazing thing, but also that the ways you can use copying to make something new.
Right.
Whether artists do it, or more practically, if you're a marketing or a behaviour change person or a general manager, what can you do to use copying to create novel solutions to your problems?
And so the book actually is not, rather than just a set of ideas to try and bust some myths, as it were, and tell a story.
Yeah.
It's also kind of a manual of how to do it better.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. I mean, I've noticed the more people I've spoken to over the last few years, you know, once we've finished the set piece conversation, they go, so what do you do? What do you do now? What do you do different?
Right.
And I wanted to give more of that and share the experience that I've had in trying to answer those questions and build up a sort of way of working which puts copying to, enhances copying into amazing power to create new things and to create better solutions.
Okay.
And see what people made of it.
Okay. Now, I mean, I think there's also a bit in the beginning of the book which I thought was quite nice, and I thought, yeah, I salute that, where you talked about rather learn to code or learn to copy, and I just thought that's brilliant, because actually learning to code, that's all the big kind of headline right now, but actually you're trying to introduce the learn to copy in terms of learn to be more innovative, learn to be creative, because those two things, they need to kind of combine, I guess.
No, absolutely. And one of the interesting things is Catherine Peters, Catherine, her name is escaping now, so you have to cut this bit out.
Yes.
One of the guys who's created one of those learn to code in a day businesses, which are doing great business with corporates.
Yeah.
With general and middle managers, is their business is coded. They talk about how copying is at the heart of learning to be a good coder.
Right.
Why invent everything from scratch when you've got a whole bunch of it sitting on websites out there, on libraries, on code libraries?
Yeah, no, indeed.
Why bother? Why bother? It's just a waste of time. And what's more, it creates the potential for human error, which will mean the thing will fall over.
Well,
so why not just copy? So, but I was talking to her about it, and she said, that's the heart of what we do. I've got a bigger ambition, which is to help people be better in all aspects of business, not just in the coding piece.
Yeah. Okay. And going back to the book, there's a great example that you use in terms of to try and illustrate this, and it's right in the back of the book, and I found it and I was like, well, that's brilliant. And it talked about how hospital operating theatre teams had been put together with Formula One pit teams to learn a bit more about sort of changeovers and things. Can you tell me a little bit more about that?
So if I tell that story, I mean, this is Professor Martin Elliott, who is head of he's Director of Medicine and Professor of Paediatric Cardiological Surgery at Ormond Street.
Uh-huh.
And he also happens to be one of the nicest people you're ever going to meet. He's just a delightful man. When I first met him, he described to me over 3 decades of practitioner as a heart surgeon. He has seen the mortality rate within 2 weeks of the operation go from 90% odd down to single figures just about with the low teens. So that's a transformation in 30 years, but he still wanted to improve it.
Yeah.
And he looked around and looked at medical practice, and really it's hard to tell what would be a good thing to port into his world from other medical services. So instead, what he did was he went to, this is by luck, he, after a long 12-hour day's operation, he slumped in front of the telly watching the Formula One highlights.
Right.
And he realised in that moment that what he didn't have was a medical problem. what he had was a handover problem. That's the critical moment where human errors all came from. Because if you think about it, a small child with feeds into it, stuck into little wires and so on,
Yeah.
it's very vulnerable, just in the same way as a Formula One driver is.
Yes.
Now, Formula One 50 years ago had 3, 4, 5-minute pit stops.
Yeah.
And they still had a human error, which created critical accidents, 1 in every 3 races, something like that.
Right.
And now they're 5 seconds, same number of people, more tech, much more complicated tech, and absolutely no critical errors. And so he learned from them. He worked first of all with the great guys at McLaren team in Britain, and then went to Ferrari.
Okay.
And developed protocol, which is basically how, for that moment where you transfer from theatre into ICU, 2 sets of humans, 2 sets of wires, 2 sets of machines, 2 sets of tubes, and some very tired people.
Yes.
How do you minimise that? Do what Formula One do. As you know, the error count is reduced by something like 42% immediately, and it's now been adopted around the world as the protocol for those kind of moments in surgery. It's amazing.
No, I thought I picked that example because I just thought it was so left field, as it were, but also kind of like so logical in how you would learn from somebody, because you're almost taking something which is quite, just finding something which is similar and then just learning across domains. And I just thought, that's brilliant.
Absolutely. And so for me, the really big thing here is, this is my final piece of advice on how to learn to copy well. For readers of the book, which is to ask yourself what kind of thing it is I'm trying to deal with. What kind of problem is it in front of me?
Right.
And by Martin was able to say it's a handover problem.
Right.
By knowing it's a handover problem, you go, who does handovers? Who's the best at handovers in the world?
Right.
I'm going to find out what they do, see if I can learn from them. Now that seems to me to be a really essential thing if you're going to be copying well and using it for really big decisions. Rather than ask yourself, rather than just go, it was really popular, all the ad boys and girls who were screaming about was popular at the Cannes Festival last year.
Yeah.
Or the tech guys are going, so what the guys at Uber have done, or what Steve Jobs said.
Yeah.
It's just that will get you so far.
Yes.
Or, what I call, my favourite fishing fly or favourite club reference. So that thing that I copy again and again and again. This forces you, this question, what kind of thing have I got? What kind of problem is it? Forces you to look beyond that, to look further afield, and thereby create both more error and more competitive advantage if you're in a competitive space.
Excellent. That's
so
really
don't ever forget what kind of thing.
What kind of thing? Well, I mean, it forces you, rather than just actually to focus on kind of looking for areas that you can improve, it actually focuses your mind on almost a typology of the kind of the issue that you're dealing with. That's
exactly right. Exactly right. So in the book, what I've done is I've included the map from my previous book with Professor Bentley about choice styles. Now, for most marketers and behaviour change people, it's a really simple map.
Yeah.
But it's really useful. And that allows you to go, is this the kind of choice that is made by an individual on their own, considering the utilities of A versus B versus C?
Yeah.
Sort of rational choices described by classical economics.
Yeah.
And if it is that, then fine. So you know what to do. You need to make the utility maximised.
Yeah.
And you need to communicate the maximisation of that utility. And you might be able to do price trade-offs, but that's how it works.
Excellent.
But if it's not working like this, that's not how people are choosing. Then if they're choosing on the basis of what's popular around here right now, then don't be bored and rigid about utilities. Don't tell them about the benefits. Don't tell them about the thing at all. Tell them about how popular it is.
Yeah. No, that makes complete sense. So, Mark, I know you need to go run for a plane in a second, but is there anything you'd like to add before I ask you my final question that I always ask people that I interview on the podcast?
No, I just hope that people find this useful, and useful not just that's interesting, as most sort of narrative business books, which probably have a bunch of ideas, but they find it useful and they can do something with it.
Okay.
Because that's my real ambition, is to help people not just feel more comfortable, but begin to do it.
Okay. Well, I mean, you might have just already answered the question, but my final question I always ask is, what would you like to shamelessly plug?
Shamelessly plug. I've created a set of cards for all the strategies, which will be available from my blog shortly. So it's a full set of the 120-something strategies boiled down to 52 playing cards.
Okay.
and that's available from copycopycopy.co as of Monday, I think.
Fantastic. Well, that will be all. That website should be live by the time this kind of goes out. So I'll make sure that all gets kind of linked up and get people pointed at that. And Mark, thank you for your time today and your insight, and well done on the book. I think it's a great looking book, and it's really nice to thumb through. And go catch your plane.
Thank you very much. Nice to speak to you.
All right, take care.
Cheers, bye.
Bye bye.